Lyra walked slowly through the empty streets, her worn boots tapping against the cracked pavement. It was early evening, but the sun was already low in the sky, casting long shadows over the crumbling buildings. The market that used to be busy was now a ghost town. Everything was closed. The stalls that once sold fresh fruits and vegetables were bare. The food supplies were long gone, and with them, hope. She looked down at her son Tomo, who clutched her hand tightly. He was too young to understand how bad things had become, but he could feel it in the air. His small stomach growled, but he said nothing. Lyra had always been strong, always able to protect him, but now she felt weak, helpless, and scared. Her heart sank as she looked around. It seemed like every street was the same, empty, lifeless, and cold. The Great War had taken everything: families, homes, and the comfort of knowing what tomorrow might bring. People were desperate now, fighting for scraps for survival. But Lyra couldn't do that. She couldn't steal from others just to feed her son. No, she had something left, something she could trade. She glanced down at the silver ring on her finger. It was all she had left from her husband. It wasn't just any ring. It was a symbol of their love, passed down through generations. A small, simple piece of jewelry, but to her it meant everything. Her husband had given it to her on the day they got married. Before he vanished in the war, Lyra had never imagined she would have to sell it. But now the thought of Tomo going hungry made her stomach turn. She had no choice. She approached the small pawn shop at the end of the street, the only place still open. The shop was odd. Glowing blue signs flickered above the door and strange symbols covered the windows. The air inside felt different, almost charged, as if something powerful lay hidden within. The walls were lined with strange items, none of which seemed to belong to this world. Alien technology, old maps of star systems. Lyra took a deep breath and stepped inside. The bell above the door chimed softly as she entered, and the cold air hit her face. Behind the counter, an alien with glowing eyes looked up. His face was expressionless, but there was something unsettling about him. Drath, the shop owner. He had lived in the town for as long as anyone could remember, and rumors followed him wherever he went. Some said he was not human. Others said he knew things about people, things he shouldn't know. Lyra took another step forward, holding her son's hand tightly. Tomo's big eyes stared at the strange creature behind the counter. "Excuse me," Lyra said, her voice barely above a whisper. I need to sell this." She slowly removed the silver ring from her finger and placed it gently on the counter. The alien, Drath, didn't speak at first. He only stared at the ring with his glowing eyes, his face unreadable. Lyra tried to stay calm, but her heart was pounding. Her hand shook as she waited for him to speak. All she wanted was enough food to fill her son's belly. She had nothing else to give. Finally, Drath spoke. His voice was deep, almost like a hum, and the sound sent a chill through her. "We want you, not the ring." Lyra froze. She had been prepared to lose her ring, but she was not prepared for this. The words made her stomach twist. She looked at the alien with wide eyes, not understanding. I don't understand," she stammered. Drath's eyes glowed brighter. He slowly reached forward and pushed the ring back toward her. It glinted in the low light, still warm from her touch. "The ring is not what we seek," Drath said. "It is you, Lyra Varen. You are the one we've been waiting for." Lyra's mind raced. How did he know her name? How could he know anything about her? She hadn't told anyone about the ring, about her past. She had kept everything a secret, even from her son. "We need you," Drath continued, his voice steady but somehow filled with an unspoken warning. "And we can give you something more than food, Lyra, much more." Lyra felt her heart beat faster. She had to make a decision. What did this alien mean? Why was he so interested in her? And why had he said her name so easily? Her mind raced with fear and confusion. She couldn't explain it, but she knew this wasn't a simple pawn shop. There was something bigger at play here. Before she could respond, the door to the shop slammed open and a gust of wind rushed in. A group of soldiers appeared in the doorway, their boots heavy on the ground. They were human, but their uniforms were strange, their faces covered by helmets. Their eyes locked on Lyra, and she felt a cold shiver run down her spine. The leader of the soldiers, a tall man with a scar running down his cheek, stepped forward. "There you are," he said with a voice full of authority. "We've been looking for you." Lyra's breath caught in her throat. What did they want with her? Drath's eyes shifted and a soft hum filled the air. He stood between her and the soldiers. The room seemed to pulse with energy. "You are not the ones she's meant for," Drath said quietly. but his words were filled with a strange power. The soldiers hesitated, looking unsure of themselves for the first time. Lyra felt a wave of confusion and fear, but she stood tall. She had to protect her son. What was going on? And why did it feel like her life was about to change forever? Lyra could barely catch her breath as she looked from the soldiers back to Drath, who stood as though he were guarding her. The situation had escalated faster than she could process. The alien pawnshop, the strange ring, the cryptic words, it all felt like too much. And now these soldiers who clearly weren't just random passers-by. Something was happening. Something that Lyra didn't understand but could feel deep in her bones. "You've been tracking me, haven't you?" Lyra finally asked, her voice shaking but firm. The scar-faced soldier didn't respond immediately. He simply stood there, his eyes narrowing behind his helmet. The others remained silent as well, almost as if they were waiting for something. Waiting for her, it seemed. Drath's glowing eyes flicked toward the soldiers before he turned back to Lyra. The silence in the room grew heavier. Lyra held her breath as the alien spoke, his deep voice now filled with a sense of authority that made her shiver. "You don't understand yet, Lyra. They are not looking for you as a mother or a simple woman." Lyra blinked in confusion. Was he talking about her son? Why would anyone be interested in her? She had been just another survivor, trying to make it through the aftermath of the war. She had never been anything more than that. Just a woman fighting to keep her son alive in a world that had lost all hope. But Drath's next words shattered that reality. "You are the last of your kind, Lyra. The last of the Starborn." Lyra felt the blood drain from her face. Her body went cold. She didn't understand. Her heart started to race as her mind tried to catch up with the alien's strange words. "The Starborn?" she whispered, barely able to speak the words. Drath nodded. The soldiers, now shifting uneasily behind him, didn't seem to understand what was being said. But Lyra didn't care about them. Her thoughts were racing. The Starborn. She had heard that name only once before, a long time ago from her husband. He had spoken of them as legends, stories of an ancient group of warriors who were said to have incredible powers. He had dismissed it as nothing more than myth, but now it seemed real. Too real. "You don't remember, do you?" Drath said, his voice softer now, almost as if speaking to a lost child. "You were born with a mark, Lyra, a symbol of the Starborn lineage. It's inside you. It's always been inside you." Lyra felt the weight of his words, but she couldn't connect them. What was he saying? She had no mark. She had no power. She was just a mother who had watched her husband die and was now fighting for survival. "The ring, Lyra, the ring is a part of your legacy," Drath continued, his gaze fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel like he was looking right through her. "It's not just a token of your love for your husband. It's a key, a piece of the Star Core, and you are its guardian." The words barely made sense, but Lyra could feel something stirring within her, a deep, unknown connection to what Drath was saying. She shook her head, trying to deny it. "No," she whispered, shaking her hands. "I don't understand. I'm just a woman. I'm nothing special." Drath didn't argue. Instead, he took a slow step forward, his fingers brushing the ring on the counter. As he touched it, the ring began to glow faintly. Lyra watched in disbelief as the soft light swirled around her hand. It was as if the ring had come to life, responding to something within her. "The power is within you, Lyra, whether you want it or not," Drath said quietly. "Your husband knew. He died trying to protect you from those who would misuse the power." Lyra felt her heart tighten. Her husband. She had never known the full truth about him. He had always been distant in the final years of his life, saying little about the past, only that he had been involved in something dangerous. But she had never asked. She had been too consumed by her own struggles, too focused on survival. The soldiers behind Drath shuffled uncomfortably. The leader of the group spoke up, his voice now harsher than before. "Enough of this nonsense, Drath. Hand her over. She's a threat, a weapon that cannot be allowed to live." Lyra's breath caught in her throat. A threat? What were they talking about? She wasn't a weapon. She was just a mother. But Drath raised his hand, silencing the soldier. "You don't understand." His voice was firm now. "Lyra is not just some tool to be used. She has a destiny, one that even you cannot stop." Lyra felt dizzy. Her world, once so simple and clear, had been torn apart. She had come into this pawn shop to sell her ring for food, but now she was tangled in something far bigger. She didn't know what to believe anymore. Drath stepped back, his eyes never leaving hers. You must come with me, Lyra. We cannot let them take you. The Star Corps will not wait forever. Lyra's heart raced as the tension in the room grew. The soldiers were closing in. She could feel it, the urgency in the air. They had come for her power, for something she still didn't fully understand. And as she turned toward the door, the sound of footsteps approaching, she knew one thing for certain. Her life would never be the same again. The room was filled with tension. The soldiers, now standing just feet away from Lyra and Drath, looked ready to pounce, their hands twitching toward their weapons. Lyra felt trapped, her mind spinning with confusion. How had everything changed so quickly? Just moments ago, she had been a mother desperate to find food for her son. Now she was a key player in some strange, hidden war. A woman who had unknowingly inherited powers that could alter the course of the galaxy. But Drath's words echoed in her mind. The ring is a key, a piece of the Star Corps. And you are its guardian. What did it all mean? Why her? Drath's voice cut through the heavy silence. The Star Corps is the heart of the universe, Lyra. Whoever controls it can bend the laws of reality itself. Time, gravity, even life. He stepped forward, his glowing eyes never leaving her face. Your husband died protecting the last fragment. Lyra blinked in shock. Her hands clenched around the ring, the familiar weight now feeling foreign. How could this small piece of jewelry hold so much power? It was just a simple silver band, nothing more than a memory of a man she once loved. But I'm just a mother. I have no powers, she protested weakly, her voice cracking with uncertainty. Drath gave a slight shake of his head, as though humoring her disbelief. The power is not something you learn to control, Lyra. It's something that's always been inside you, lying dormant. The ring is the catalyst, but it needs you to awaken it. He stepped aside, revealing a glowing holographic projection of stars and planets. It hovered above the counter, spinning slowly, a map of the universe. You are not just any survivor of the war, Lyra. Your bloodline goes back centuries. You are Starborn, a rare, ancient group of beings chosen to protect the Star Corps. Drath's voice softened, almost reverently. Only a Starborn can wield its power. Lyra felt a cold chill crawl down her spine. Her mind raced, but her heart felt heavy. Her husband, the man she had loved and lost, had known all of this. Had he hidden the truth from her? Why hadn't he told her? Was she supposed to protect something that she didn't even understand? Tomo, who had been silently watching from the corner of the shop, looked up at her with wide, innocent eyes. She could see the fear in his face, and it broke her heart. How could she protect him from all of this? She didn't even know how to protect herself. Drath, sensing her growing panic, placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You do not need to understand everything at once, Lyra. The power will reveal itself when the time is right. Lyra stared at the map of the stars, her mind struggling to process what Drath had said. She had no connection to these ancient warriors, no knowledge of the Star Corps or its powers. She was just a woman who had lived through war, who had buried her husband and tried to keep her son alive in a world that no longer seemed to care. And now she was supposed to be something more. Your husband knew the risks, Lyra, Drath continued, his voice low. He knew that the Star Corps could not fall into the wrong hands. That is why he kept the ring from you. He protected you from the truth, from the forces that would have used you for their own gain. Lyra's thoughts swirled. She had always thought her husband had been a simple soldier, loyal, brave, but ultimately just another casualty of the war. But now it seemed he had been much more. Suddenly a sound echoed from outside, the heavy footfalls of more soldiers approaching. Drath's eyes flicked toward the door and his expression hardened. We don't have much time. Lyra's heart raced. The soldiers outside weren't just a random patrol. They were here for her, for the ring, for something she still didn't fully understand. Drath quickly grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the back of the shop. Follow me now. Without thinking, Lyra followed, her mind still reeling. She had to get out. The soldiers were getting closer, and the weight of Drath's words still hung heavily on her shoulders. Could she really be the guardian of the Star Corps? Was it possible that everything she had known was a lie? They entered a hidden room at the back of the pawnshop. It was filled with strange artifacts, old maps, alien technology, and piles of glowing crystals. Drath pulled a small, ancient-looking device from one of the shelves and held it up to Lyra. This is the activation device. He pressed a button, and the walls around them shimmered with light. The star core is scattered across the galaxy, and there are many who would stop at nothing to control it. You have to take the next step, Lyra. You have to awaken the power inside you. Lyra hesitated, staring at the device in his hand. The words sounded like something from a dream, but they felt real. Too real. What did she have to do? Drath seemed to read her thoughts. Place the ring into the device. Trust yourself. Lyra took a deep breath. The ring was warm against her palm. She had never felt anything like it. She walked slowly toward the device and, with trembling fingers, placed the ring into a small slot at the center. The moment she did, the room around them seemed to come alive. The crystals on the walls glowed brighter and the air hummed with energy. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through her chest. Her vision blurred and she gasped as the room spun around her. The power surged within her, and for a moment she felt as though she might burst from the inside out. Then, just as suddenly, the pain stopped. The room was still, but everything felt different. The air was thick with energy and her body hummed with a strange, unfamiliar power. It's begun. Drath's voice was soft, almost reverent. You are ready, Lyra. The star core has awakened within you. Lyra stood there, her heart pounding. She didn't know what had just happened, but she felt something stir deep inside. She had no idea what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. Her life had just changed forever. The strange hum in the room still buzzed in Lyra's ears as she stood there, feeling the weight of her new reality press down on her. The star core, the ring, the power within her. She didn't understand it all, but something deep inside whispered that this was just the beginning. She glanced at Drath, who was watching her carefully, his glowing eyes reflecting a mix of relief and caution. You have to go now, Lyra. His voice was urgent. The sound of footsteps outside the room grew louder. Lyra's heart skipped a beat and she felt a chill race down her spine. The soldiers, the ones chasing her, weren't far. Time was running out. We can't stay here, Lyra said, her voice barely a whisper. She grabbed her son's hand tightly. Tomo had been quiet ever since they entered the pawnshop, his small face filled with confusion and fear. But now he clutched her hand with an almost desperate grip, as if he could sense the danger around them. Drath nodded, his expression serious. Follow me, quickly. He led them through the hidden passageways behind the shop, which twisted and turned like a maze. The wall seemed to pulse with strange energy as they moved deeper into the dark corridors. Lyra could feel the vibrations in the air, a strange electric hum that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. What is this place? She whispered, her voice tinged with both awe and fear. It's the vault of the Star Core's keepers, Drath answered, glancing over his shoulder. It was created to protect the fragments from those who would misuse them. You're safe here for now. But Lyra didn't feel safe. Not at all. Behind them, the sound of heavy boots grew louder and the murmur of voices followed. The soldiers were closing in. She could feel it. They weren't just after her. They wanted the ring, the power that now resided within her. She looked down at Tomo, his face pale, and tightened her grip on his hand. What had she gotten them into? Drath led them through another door, and they emerged into a small, dimly lit room filled with strange relics and glowing crystals. The floor was smooth, made of some kind of translucent material that shimmered in the low light. In the center of the room there was a pedestal, surrounded by alien writing. What's this? Lyra asked, her voice trembling with a mix of curiosity and fear. This is a safe house, a place protected by the keepers of the Star Core. But it's not enough to stop them. Drath paused, glancing nervously at the door. They're here. They're close. Lyra's breath caught in her throat as the reality hit her. They were being hunted. Tomo tugged on her hand. Mom, what's happening? Why are they chasing us? His voice was small and filled with worry. Lyra knelt beside him, her heart aching. She forced a smile, even though she didn't know how to explain this to him. I don't know, sweetie, but we're going to be okay. But even as she spoke, she wasn't so sure. Suddenly, the door to the chamber slammed open with a loud crash. A group of soldiers stormed into the room, their weapons drawn, their faces covered by helmets. They were ready for a fight. There she is, one of the soldiers shouted, pointing at Lyra. The Starborn! We found her! Lyra's pulse raced. They knew who she was. Drath stepped forward, his body tense, his hand raised in a gesture of warning. You won't take her. Not while I'm here. His voice was low, filled with authority, but Lyra could see the strain in his eyes. He was afraid for her, For Tomo, one of the soldiers, the leader stepped forward. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a scar running down the side of his face. He glanced at Drath, then at Lyra, his eyes cold. "Step aside, Drath. The Starborn belongs to us." Lyra's breath hitched. What did they want with her? Drath's hand moved, and suddenly the air around him shimmered. A soft hum filled the room, and the glowing crystals embedded in the walls pulsed with energy. Lyra felt a strange pull, as if the room itself was responding to Drath's power. But even with this strange energy surrounding them, the soldiers didn't hesitate. They raised their weapons, ready to strike. "Move now, Lyra," Drath commanded, his voice sharp with urgency. Lyra's instincts kicked in. She grabbed Tomo's hand and turned toward the far side of the room. Drath was right, they had to escape. But as she ran, the sound of the soldiers' voices filled the air. They were on their tail. This wasn't just a simple chase. It was a pursuit, a hunt. Drath moved swiftly, his alien form blurring as he darted through the chamber. He reached a control panel on the wall and pressed a button. A section of the wall slid open, revealing a narrow passage. "Go!" Drath urged. Lyra didn't hesitate. She pulled Tomo with her, her legs moving as fast as they could. The soldiers were still behind them, but Drath had bought them a few moments. They needed to move faster. They entered the passage, and the door shut behind them with a hiss. It was dark, but the walls glowed faintly, providing just enough light to see. "Where does this lead?" Lyra asked, her breath heavy from running. "To the surface. It's an old escape route. You'll be safe for now." They ran for what felt like an eternity. Every step, every breath felt heavier. Lyra's heart hammered in her chest. They couldn't stop. Not until they were out of the city, away from the soldiers. Behind them, the sound of the soldiers' pursuit grew louder. The chase wasn't over. In fact, it was only just beginning. Lyra didn't know what was waiting for them on the other side. But she knew one thing for sure. There was no turning back now. The narrow tunnel twisted ahead, winding deeper into the earth like a lifeline. Lyra's breath came in ragged gasps, her feet stumbling against the uneven ground as she pulled Tomo along. The dark passage seemed endless, the faint hum of Drath's energy barely enough to guide them. Each step felt heavier, the weight of what was happening pressing down on her chest. Tomo had stopped asking questions, his silence heavy with the fear he didn't fully understand. He was holding her hand tightly, his small fingers almost painfully clenching hers. His innocence was all she had left to protect, and the thought of losing him made her heart ache. "We have to keep moving, Lyra." Drath's voice broke through the darkness. It was calm, but it carried a sense of urgency that Lyra couldn't ignore. I know. She nodded, trying to push the panic down. She couldn't let it take over, not now. Not when Tomo needed her the most. The tunnel seemed to stretch on for miles, but at last they emerged into a small, cavernous room filled with strange, pulsating lights. The air here was thick with an odd kind of energy that hummed through Lyra's body, making her feel both alive and exposed at the same time. It was as though the very walls were alive, responding to her presence. Drath stopped in the center of the room, his eyes glowing brighter as he turned toward Lyra. "This is the place," he said, his voice reverberating softly in the cavern. "Here, the Star Core's power will fully awaken within you." Lyra looked around, her eyes narrowing. The room was filled with intricate designs etched into the walls, symbols she couldn't understand but felt drawn to. At the center of the room stood a stone pedestal, shaped like an ancient altar surrounded by glowing crystals. Their soft light flickered in rhythm, casting long shadows that seemed to move with the pulse of the energy. What is this place?" Lyra asked, her voice barely a whisper. "This is the Starborn Sanctum. It is the final resting place of the Star Core," Drath said, his voice filled with reverence. "And it is where you, Lyra, will unlock the full potential of your lineage, the power you've inherited from the Starborn." Lyra shook her head, still trying to grasp the enormity of it all. "I don't understand. I don't want any of this." Drath took a step closer, his hand outstretched. "You don't have a choice. You never did." His voice was firm, though not unkind. "The Star Core chose you. Your husband knew it. He died protecting this secret, keeping you safe from those who would have used you. But the time has come for you to embrace your destiny." Lyra looked down at the silver ring still in her hand. It was warm now, almost as if it had a life of its own. The ring was a part of her, a piece of something much larger than she could have ever imagined. Tomo tugged at her sleeve, his voice small. "Mom, what's going to happen?" Lyra knelt beside him, trying to smile even though her heart was in pieces. I don't know, sweetie, but whatever happens, I won't let anything hurt you. Drath watched them, a subtle sadness in his eyes. The Star Core is not just power, Lyra, it's a responsibility. It's about balance, and you will be the one to maintain it. The galaxy's future rests in your hands. Lyra felt a cold shiver run down her spine. The future of the galaxy? She was no hero. She had no training. She was a mother, a widow, a survivor. Nothing more. Yet here she was, the guardian of the Star Core. It seemed impossible. I can't do this, Drath. I'm just a mother. Drath's eyes softened. And that is why you are the one chosen. You see what others don't. You understand the value of life, of protection. That is what makes you different. For a long moment, Lyra stood still, holding her son's hand. The weight of Drath's words hung in the air. She wanted to run, to escape back to the quiet life she had once known, to hide from this responsibility that felt so far beyond her. But something inside her stirred, a quiet, persistent pull. She wasn't alone anymore. The room around them seemed to pulse with energy, and as Lyra stared at the glowing crystals, she realized they were calling to her. They weren't just lights, they were a signal, a beacon that resonated with the ring in her hand. Taking a deep breath, Lyra stepped forward, her legs shaking. She approached the pedestal, feeling the air thicken with power. The moment she stood before it, a sudden, overwhelming surge of energy shot through her body. The pain was sharp, almost unbearable, and she cried out in surprise, stumbling backward. Tomo grabbed her arm, his small voice frantic. Mom, are you okay? Lyra couldn't respond. Her entire body was trembling as the energy inside her seemed to grow, expanding, filling her every cell. She felt like she was being torn apart. Yet at the same time, something deep inside her began to grow stronger. A new sense of purpose, a deep-rooted strength she hadn't known was there, began to awaken. Her vision blurred, and for a moment, everything around her became a whirl of light and sound. She saw flashes, visions of planets, stars, and galaxies, and then images of her husband, his face twisted in pain, but also in determination. She reached out, her hand shaking, and placed the ring into the pedestal. As soon as she did, the room exploded with light. A roar of power surged through the space, and Lyra fell to her knees, overwhelmed by the sheer force of it. But then, calm, she opened her eyes. The room had returned to its eerie stillness, but now everything was different. Lyra could feel it, the power was within her. She didn't know how or why, but she could feel it pulsing through her veins like a living thing. It was as if she had tapped into something ancient, something that connected her to the universe itself. Drath stood beside her, watching her closely. It's done, Lyra. The Star Core is now a part of you. Lyra looked down at her hands, trembling with the weight of what had just happened. The power was real, and now there was no turning back. Lyra sat on the cold stone floor, her legs trembling from the intense surge of power that had just coursed through her. The Star Core, it was within her now, deep inside, and she could feel its presence, alive, pulsing, and waiting. The energy wasn't just external. It had fused with her, become a part of her being. It was overwhelming, yet somehow comforting, but she knew that this power came with a cost. Nothing this immense could be without consequence. Tomo, still holding her hand, looked at her with wide eyes. He was scared, his small face twisted with confusion and concern. Mom, what happened to you? His voice trembled. Lyra could barely speak. The words were stuck in her throat, her mind racing with the enormity of what she had just experienced. It felt like her very being had expanded, reached out into the vastness of space itself. She could feel everything, the universe, the stars, the weight of time itself, as if they were all woven into the fabric of her thoughts. She took a deep breath, trying to focus. It's all right, Tomo. She managed to whisper, but even she wasn't convinced by her own words. She wasn't sure what was happening or why it was happening, but she was certain of one thing. Everything had changed. Drath, who had been standing silently at the far end of the chamber, stepped forward. His eyes, glowing softly in the dim light, watched her with a knowing expression. The transformation, what does this mean for me? For Tomo? Drath tilted his head slightly as though considering her question carefully. The power you now possess is both a gift and a responsibility. The Star Core chooses its guardians carefully. You are the one who will wield its energy to restore balance. But you must remember, balance does not come without sacrifice. Lyra closed her eyes, trying to process his words. Restore balance. That sounded like a noble cause, something grand and meaningful. But what did it really mean for someone like her? Someone who had only ever cared about surviving, about protecting her son. She wasn't a warrior. She wasn't some grand leader. She was a mother, a woman trying to rebuild a broken world. What happens now? Lyra asked, looking up at Drath, her voice filled with a quiet desperation. What am I supposed to do with all of this? Drath's expression softened, as though he could see the confusion and fear swirling within her. You will face those who seek to control the power you now hold. The forces of darkness will come for you, for the Star Core. The power inside you cannot be hidden forever. The weight of his words pressed down on her chest. The forces of darkness. Lyra had no idea who or what he meant by that. But she didn't need to ask. She could already feel the shift in the air, the tension, the growing sense that they were being hunted. The soldiers that had followed them into the sanctum weren't the only ones after her. And Tomo? Lyra asked, her eyes locking onto Drath's. What happens to my son? Drath studied her for a moment, and his gaze softened, almost as if he understood the depths of her fear. Your son is safe. He is part of you, and the Star Core will protect him as long as you remain true to its balance. Lyra nodded, but even her motherly instincts couldn't fully ease the gnawing sense of unease growing inside her. She had always known that survival in this broken world came at a cost, but she had never expected the cost to be this high. We need to leave. Drath's voice broke through her thoughts. The soldiers will return soon. They won't give up easily. Lyra looked down at Tomo, his face still a mixture of fear and uncertainty. She hated seeing him like this. Hated that she couldn't protect him from this nightmare that had consumed their lives. But there was no escaping it now. The Star Core had chosen her, and she had no choice but to answer its call. Okay, we'll go, Lyra said, her voice more steady than she felt. But where? Where do we go now? Drath pointed toward a narrow corridor at the far end of the chamber. The only place that can offer you safety is the Enclave. It's a hidden city far from here. It's where the last of the Starborn have taken refuge. It's the only place where you can learn to control the power you hold. Lyra nodded. The Enclave. She had heard whispers of it, rumors that it was a sanctuary for those who carried the Starborn's legacy, but she had never imagined that she would be one of them. And now it seemed it was her only hope. With a final glance at Drath, Lyra grabbed Tomo's hand once more. They started toward the corridor, but as she walked, she felt the weight of the Star Core settle within her. It was there, deep inside, like an untapped well of energy. But energy wasn't enough. She had to learn how to use it, how to wield it, to protect her son and whatever was left of this broken world. As they reached the end of the narrow passage, a loud crash echoed from behind them. The soldiers. They had found their way in. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. It was time. They couldn't stay here any longer. She could feel the power rising within her. That strange alien energy that seemed to answer her every thought. But she wasn't sure she was ready. Go now, Drath urged, pushing them forward. Lyra hesitated for just a moment before she ran, faster than she had ever run in her life. With Tomo by her side and the power of the Star Core just a whisper away, they were coming for her. But now, for the first time, she wasn't afraid. She was ready to fight. The wind howled through the darkened streets as Lyra and Tomo sprinted into the night, the heavy footfalls of the soldiers echoing behind them. Time was running out. Every second felt like a countdown. They had to make it to the Enclave, the only place left where she could truly understand her new power and find some semblance of safety. The future felt uncertain, but one thing was clear. There was no turning back now. The Star Core was part of her, and she couldn't hide from it. Not anymore. Tomo's small hand gripped hers tightly as they ran, his face pale with fear but determined. He didn't fully understand what was happening, but he trusted her. And in that moment, that trust gave her strength. The alleyways they navigated through were twisted, dark, and narrow. The city, once bustling with life, now felt like a labyrinth, a maze designed to trap them, to keep them from escaping. But escape was the only option. The soldiers were closing in, and their heavy armor clanged with each step they took. "Mom, what's happening? Why are they chasing us?" Tomo's voice, soft and fearful, pierced the silence. Lyra slowed for just a moment, her breath ragged as she looked down at her son. She could see the fear in his eyes, the fear of not understanding, the fear of the unknown. He had already lost so much, and now it seemed like the world was crashing down around them. "We're going to make it. Tomo. She tried to keep her voice steady, though the doubt in her heart threatened to break through. I promise, but the words were hollow. The soldiers were too close, and there was no telling what would happen when they reached the enclave. Would they be safe there? Or would the danger follow them? As they turned a corner, Drath appeared ahead of them, his figure glowing faintly in the darkness. This way. Quickly! He motioned for them to follow him. Without a second thought, Lyra pulled Tomo along, desperation fueling their steps. They had no time to waste. The Star Core's power thrummed inside her, urging her forward, but she had no control over it. Not yet. They ran for what felt like an eternity, their feet pounding against the cold pavement. Then ahead, the gates of the enclave came into view, a massive, towering structure that shimmered with an ethereal glow. It looked like a sanctuary, a place untouched by the chaos of the world outside. But Lyra knew better than to think it would be that simple. Hurry. They're almost here, Drath shouted, pushing them forward. Lyra's heart raced as they neared the gates. Her breath was coming in short bursts, her muscles aching from the exertion. But they couldn't stop. Not now. Not when they were so close. The gates of the enclave opened with a low, grinding sound, revealing the vast, hidden city within. It was a stark contrast to the world outside, alive with energy, vibrant with color. Lyra couldn't help but pause for a moment, mesmerized by the sight. Could this really be a place of refuge? Keep moving, Drath urged, his voice sharper now, his urgency clear. The gates closed behind them with a heavy thud, and the distant sounds of the soldiers' pursuit faded into nothingness. They were safe. For now. But as Lyra stepped deeper into the enclave, something shifted inside her. The power within her, the Star Core, was no longer just a distant force. It was hers, fully awakened, and with it came the weight of responsibility she hadn't yet fully understood. She had seen visions of distant stars and planets, flashes of people and places she'd never known. The Star Core had shown her things about her own past, her husband, the secrets he had kept from her, and the true reason she had been chosen to bear the power of the Starborn. Lyra could feel it now. The connection to everything, the cosmos, the balance of life and death, the forces that shaped the universe. She was part of something much larger than herself, and whether she liked it or not, her fate was intertwined with the Star Core. The universe was watching her, waiting. Drath led them through the winding streets of the enclave, past towering buildings made of glowing materials and lush gardens that seemed to thrive in the otherwise bleak world. Everything was alive here, alive with purpose, with hope. This is the heart of the Starborn. Lyra, this is where you will learn to control the power within you, Drath said as they walked, his voice calm but serious. You are the last of your kind, and the galaxy depends on you now. Lyra felt the weight of his words settle around her. The galaxy? She was just a mother. How could the fate of an entire galaxy rest in her hands? But then something deep inside her stirred. The Star Core. It was there, inside her, a part of her, powerful, undeniable, and she couldn't ignore it any longer. She would have to learn to wield it, to control it. For Tomo, for the galaxy. As they reached the heart of the enclave, Drath turned to face her, his eyes filled with both expectation and caution. This is only the beginning, Lyra. He paused for a moment before speaking again. The forces that seek the Star Core will come for you. And when they do, you must be ready. Lyra stood still for a moment, her gaze falling to the ring still clenched in her hand. It was warm, almost alive, and she could feel its pull, its power calling to her. I'm ready, she whispered, though her voice wavered with uncertainty. Was she truly ready? She didn't know, but she had no choice now. The Star Core had chosen her, and there was no turning back. As she stepped forward, the gates of the enclave behind them slowly closed, sealing them inside. The weight of the world, the universe itself, seemed to rest on her shoulders. And in that moment, Lyra realized that this was her new beginning. The path ahead was uncertain, full of dangers she couldn't even imagine. But she would face them, one step at a time, for herself and for her son, for the future of the galaxy. And as the gates closed, she felt the hum of the Star Core within her. She was no longer just a survivor. She was a guardian,